Hey everyone, how's it going? Happy May 4th. I'm here today to do something that I've never done before, and that is to rank all the Star Wars movies. I finally have a list that I agree with and that I wholeheartedly feel is the correct list, in my opinion. So from worst to best, I'm going to rank all the Star Wars movies. Starting off in last place is The Rise of Skywalker. Now, I'm not a big sequel fan. I have a lot of issues with the sequels, and The Rise of Skywalker is just a super disappointing movie. It's a movie that moves so quickly that you don't have enough time to realize that none of it makes any sense. And that really is the movie. It's aggressively fast, not in a good way. The plot makes absolutely no sense, and it's just a super weak ending to one of the greatest film sagas of all time. After that, we have The Last Jedi. The only reason that I have The Last Jedi after Rise of Skywalker is because while I don't agree with a lot of the things in it, it's not a bad movie. It's actually, in a lot of ways, quite a decent movie. There's things that don't work, but overall, it's quite a solid movie, and it's just not nearly as bad as The Rise of Skywalker. There are a lot of things that don't work, don't get me wrong. I think the whole subplot with Finn and Rose, the whole subplot with Poe were just badly written and stupid, quite frankly. But the Luke subplot is not bad. However, I don't like it. I feel like it betrays the character of Luke. I feel like it's a disappointing kind of thing to see my childhood hero of Luke become this broken old man, and I have a lot of opinions on that, but overall, I don't think it's a badly done plot, and I think Mark Hamill does an amazing job. I just don't agree with it. Next, we have Solo. Now, Solo is fascinating because it's a movie that nobody really liked that much when it came out. It wasn't really paid that much attention to, didn't do super well, and yet it's actually really good. I like Solo a lot. I think it's a super fun movie. I think it's got lots of fun Easter eggs. I think it's just a super fun adventure overall. I think Alden Ehrenreich, who plays Han Solo, does an amazing job of playing a character that feels like Han Solo, but also isn't trying to do a Harrison Ford impression. He's doing his own thing and making a more naive, young version of the character that we know. And we can kind of see how he goes from that character and that version of the character all the way to kind of how we see him in A New Hope. The only two gripes that I have with it is that some of the characters and things, they kind of die and you don't really care, and you feel like the characters bounce back from tragedy in a weird way where it doesn't affect their character. Woody Harrelson's character, he bounces back from the tragedy of, I can't remember if it was his girlfriend or his wife or whatever, but whoever it was that died when she gets blown up, his character should have been more affected by it, but he kind of just gets over it, and it doesn't really affect him at all, which is strange, and you kind of just forget about them. The other thing is that while the movie is super fun and has lots of fun things in it, once you finish watching the movie, it doesn't really leave you with anything. You kind of just forget about it right after, and the mark of a good movie is a movie that leaves you with lasting impressions, leaves you with things to think about and ponder on, and this movie doesn't really do that. Next is The Force Awakens. The Force Awakens is a weird movie for me because I really enjoy it. And I remember seeing it when I was 7 or 8 years old in theaters and absolutely loving it. And I think it's a very solid movie. Yeah, it's a bit of a copy of A New Hope. Okay, fair. And Starkiller Base is pretty dumb, and I don't really agree with that. I think the second Death Star in Return of the Jedi is kind of pushing it, to be honest, but I accept it because I love Return of the Jedi. But there's also a lot of things that I really, really love. I mean, I think the whole mystery behind where is Luke is super, super exciting, and the fact that nobody really, Rey's, wasn't he a myth? There's a whole mystery there. I think everything with Kylo Ren is amazing, and I think he's the only really good part of the sequels. He's the part that feels consistent and thought out until the end, of course, but everything else feels like a really solid character, and I think Adam Driver is incredible as Kylo Ren. I think Finn was great. I think all the characters were really good, and it's the next two movies where they kind of start to fall apart. I think there's a lot of great things, but also I wonder about sort of a second Empire. Seems a little weird. I'm a little sad that we never get to see Luke and Han reunite, but as a movie itself, it's a good movie, and I think it made for a solid reintroduction into this new era of Star Wars, and for that, I think it's a great movie. Next is The Phantom Menace. I just saw this movie today, actually, in theaters for the 25th anniversary, and man, it was cool. I felt like when the movie started and we saw the opening crawl and the opening scenes, I felt like I was in 1999 seeing the movie for the first time, and it was a very, very cool experience. I think it's a super solid movie. I love Qui-Gon. I think Qui-Gon's an excellent character. I think Darth Maul, of course, steals the show in every scene that he's in Duel of the Fates. Seeing that on the big screen was just incredible. I think there's a lot of great stuff on Tatooine. I think the pod racing sequence is really fun. I think everything with kind of the way they set up Anakin being taken from his mother, and I think Shmi's a really interesting character. There's a lot of cool stuff there. And I feel like the politics, personally for me, I love the political stuff. I think it's really interesting and really realistic and grounded, and I think it has a lot of connections to real world history, and I think it makes for a really, really interesting plot there. Overall, I think it's a super solid movie. I think the characters are great, and I think it makes for an introduction to a really, really good 6-film saga. I should also mention I am a big prequels fan. I love the prequels. I stand by the original 6 movies, and so that's just where I'm coming from, just kind of to keep that in mind. I think Phantom Menace really is, in a lot of ways, kind of like the period movie. You know, it's the period piece. It's the one that has the politics. It has the kind of, it has that vibe in a lot of ways, which I think is super cool, and I really appreciate that about it. Next is Attack of the Clones. I like Attack of the Clones. It's a great movie. Again, I'm a big prequels fan. I think Attack of the Clones is a little bit better just because, for me, it has a lot more to offer in terms of Star Wars. I kind of go back and forth between Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones, which one I prefer. But right now I'm thinking Attack of the Clones is a bit better. I think it has a lot more to offer. We get to see, Kamino and the clones. We get to see the Battle of Geonosis and all the Jedi fighting in a big battle in this big arena, which was a super cool thing to see. I think there's a lot of really exciting action sequences. Of course, everything on Tatooine, seeing, the Lars homestead recreated and then getting to see Anakin go kill the Tuskens and go full dark side and is super cool. And of course, the death of his mother is a super important part of the story and really shifts a lot of things. I think the Anakin-Padme romance is actually good. I think people say it's really bad, but it's really not. There's a couple iffy lines, I'll give you that. There's a couple, pieces of dialogue that don't work, but overall I think the romance is well done. I think Hayden Christensen is great. I love him as Anakin. Of course, Jango Fett is a super cool character, and getting to see the origins of Boba Fett. There's just so many cool things that the movie has to offer, and for that reason, I'm putting it above Phantom Menace. I almost forgot, but I'm just editing this video now. I also wanted to mention I love an Attack of the Clones. Seeing Count Dooku, I think Christopher Lee steals the show and is amazing. And also, the final fight, getting to see Yoda fight with a lightsaber is super, super cool. Another amazing thing about Attack of the Clones. The next one is Rogue One. I remember seeing this in the theaters as well. I was, I guess, probably 9, because it came out a year after Force Awakens. And man, it's just such a good movie. I mean, it connects into A New Hope so perfectly. It takes this little bit of information of the Rebel spies and then expands out into a whole movie that fixes some plot holes in A New Hope of why the Death Star is so easy to blow up, and creates a super captivating story. I think Tarkin was cool to see him. I think Orson Krennic made for a super cool villain. I think the characters are great. I think there's just so much great stuff in it. I mean, the whole finale obviously is amazing. Darth Vader in the hallway scene was I remember being in the theater and seeing that and seeing how it was such an exciting experience. And I was freaking out. I think that was a super good addition to the saga. It fits right in with the rest of the movies. It's its own story, but still super meaningful to the rest of the saga. And it's one thing that I think Disney did really, really well. Next is Return of the Jedi. Return of the Jedi, for me, is the weakest of the original trilogy, albeit the first 2 movies are perfect. But Return of the Jedi, while the first 2 acts, I'm not saying I don't like them, I love the first 2 acts. While the first 2 acts, the Jabba stuff and the Endor stuff, are not bad, they're not as good as the first 2 movies. However, everything to do with Luke's journey and Vader and Palpatine and that entire 3rd act where Vader's redemption and Palpatine and the lightning and Vader's mask and being taken off and his face being revealed and his death and everything that's probably my favorite stuff in the entire saga, next to, of course, Anakin's kind of fall to the dark side and Revenge of the Sith. It's just such beautiful stuff. It's so amazing, and it never gets old, no matter how many times you watch it. I will say I'm not totally sure how I feel about the Ewoks. I loved them as a kid. I find it a little hard to believe that they could destroy the Empire's best legion of troops. But I mean, I understand the idea they were going for. I think the idea that they're the unlikely heroes that end up being the rebellion's ally is kind of a cool idea. I like the Jabba stuff. It's a little cheesy, but I still really love it. I think the Rancor sequence is super cool. I love the speeder bike chase on Endor. There's a lot of great things, but overall, everything with Luke's journey and Vader and Palpatine and that entire kind of finale of wrapping up the entire trilogy is just so, so brilliant. Next is Revenge of the Sith, the peak of the prequels. I love Revenge of the Sith. so much. It's such an incredible movie. It's so cinematic, it's so tragic, it's so beautiful. After seeing everything come full circle and kind of connecting into the original trilogy was so beautiful to see. I think obviously there's so many things I could talk about, but you know, the battle between Anakin and Obi-Wan on Mustafar, seeing Anakin be put into the Vader suit and hearing him breathe for the first time, so many cool things. Yoda battling Sidious, seeing Anakin's kind of falls with the dark side. Hayden Christensen is so amazing, and everything that happens with him and Palpatine. Hayden Christensen and Ian McDiarmid, and seeing them and kind of seeing Palpatine manipulate Anakin and sort of slowly weave him into the dark side is such a cool thing to see. It's so amazing. It's one of the best Star Wars movies of all time, in my opinion, and it's such like a tragic, beautiful, Shakespearean kind of story. Next is A New Hope. A New Hope, it's the original, it's the classic, and it's just a perfect movie. When you watch this movie with the lens of kind of seeing it as somebody who's never seen Star Wars before and you think about it, it's such an amazing movie. You know, we have these two ships and we see the Empire, and then we see the Stormtroopers break in, and then Darth Vader's entrance, and then we follow these two droids down to this mysterious desert planet until they meet up with Luke, and the story just keeps building and building, and a story that's just perfect from beginning to end. And of course the final battle, the final Death Star battle, the Battle of Yavin, is a masterclass in terms of building tension and building suspense. Overall, a perfect movie. So well done. I could go on and on for hours about how amazing it is, but it's one of the best ones. Number one, Empire Strikes Back. It takes A New Hope and builds on it and creates a more character-driven, more deep, more dark, more mature kind of story. And again, it's such a perfect movie from beginning to end. It takes A New Hope and makes everything just a little bit better, a little bit more expansive, and so much of what Star Wars is owes itself to The Empire Strikes Back. And of course, one of the greatest film twists in all of movie history. Absolutely fantastic, beautiful movie. So that's my list for the Star Wars rankings. In the comments below, let me know what your rankings are. I'm curious to know. Again, happy May 4th. It's a very special day. And may the Force be with you.